So I wanted to know what exactly is string theory. Is it still a theory or is it proven now?
It's definitely just right. It's definitely not proven. So string theory is the concept that the fundamental forces in the universe, like electromagnetism, gravity, nuclear forces, things like that. There's a kind of invisible string of which the universe is made, and these strings vibrate.
Right.
And as the strings of reality vibrate, that's what these forces are. And it holds a certain, when you get into the very deep mathematics of physics, like standard model, and the standard model predicted the Higgs boson correctly, so it can't be completely wrong. It does all fall very neatly into these like equations of string theory. And there's other things like general relativity, Einstein's equations. They also pop out of string theory. If you model mathematically all the forces as string.
Okay.
But that's what it is. But no, it's not proven, and you can't, it's one of the things. It's very hard to prove string theory.
It's an attempt of
because we need 10 dimensions to prove that.
Yeah, it's so hard to prove. The one thing that it does have, as I say, going for it is that they did find the Higgs particle. So a lot of these kind of theories, like standard model string theory, predicted the Higgs particle before it was discovered by the Hadron Collider. So that doesn't prove they're right, but they did make predictions that proved to be right.
String theory, according to me, string theory is an attempt to unify all the forces of nature.
Oh yes, exactly. That's exactly right. And as I said, and it does that, as I said, by imagining the universe is string.
Right, it's a string.
And the vibrations of these
everything is interconnected in some sense.
Exactly, yeah. And the vibrations of these strings is what these forces are. That's how they are unified.
Right. That we can say that.
Yeah. So
everything that is happening in our universe is because of a string vibrating.
Exactly, yeah. Everything. All the atoms are all in line on the string, and the string vibrates, and it makes stuff happen. But it's certainly not proven. It's certainly still a theory.
Right. You cannot unify the laws. Yeah. But there is one more speculation that in higher dimension it can be proved. So what's your take on that?
It can be proved, yes. It's just not, but it's very hard to prove.
Yeah, because we don't have the dimensions.
Yeah. So, and there are a lot of, because it needs at least, string theory needs at least 11 dimensions to work.
Yes,
11
at least 11. And there are a lot of people saying it's a lot more than that. But it's absolutely at least 11. So there's the three normal space dimensions. We've got forwards and backwards, left and right, up and down.
Up and down.
Yeah, that's 3. And then you've got time, which is 4.
Fourth one.
And then loads of other complicated ones as well. There's ones that are just for like electromagnetism. There's ones just for gravity. There's nuclear forces. So nuclear forces is you get things like protons and neutrons in the nucleus of an atom. And there are forces that only interact between those particles, called strong and weak nuclear forces. And those have certain dimensions as well within string theory. And then a lot of them, the mathematical models have like 40 dimensions. They have loads of different space dimensions. They have multiple time dimensions.
Right.
So if time is one dimension, if it's just a straight line, but if it is possible to jump out of that and go into other, if time travel is possible, time must be more than one dimensional. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to move anywhere. You wouldn't be able to get forwards or backwards. There'd be no off the timeline. So that needs to be at least 2-dimensional if time travel is possible.
And for time to be 2-dimensional,
thought experiment that what will happen if we go in time in 45 degree, because time is 90 degree, it's a straight line. What if we go 45 degree in it, or 50 degree, or 60 degree, or anything?
Exactly. Well, then you could that's when you get into the multiverse, alternate timelines. Like if there are alternate timelines, whatever that means, you need to be able to move at 90 degrees to your current timeline to get to them, or 45 degrees to them. You need to be able to move off at an angle. You need there to be that dimension. You can't just have left and right. You need an up and down, so you can have that angle. That dimension, unless that dimension doesn't exist. In which case, which is from everything we see in our daily lives, it would appear that time is one-dimensional. everyone is a day older than they were yesterday.
Right.
But you do get things with like the Hadron Collider tachyons, weird particles that maybe
Tachyons,
aren't bound by the same laws as we are. That's a
because
very
it travels
cutting
faster
edge.
than light.
Well, yeah, tachyons appear to arrive before they set off. So you can tell by measuring the properties of a tachyon, you can tell what's going to happen to it, not what has happened to it.
Okay.
What's
So
going
we
to
can
happen, right?
predict the time travel.
So they appear to
for that.
Yeah, they appear to travel backwards in time.
Okay.
So that's but I must admit, I really don't know. No one does. This isn't why I don't feel bad for not knowing. No one really knows this stuff, I think.
Yeah, no one really knows.
But you do get interesting. These tachyons definitely do exist. Like there is evidence that they exist. But does that? But there isn't proof that tachyons can move forwards in time.
Okay.
So
how do people realize that they are actually traveling forward through time? Are the forward people telling the backward people, or?
So so when you when you look at a tachyon and measure its properties, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but I think it's like its spin, things like that. Its properties, unlike you and me, like if you have a scar on your arm, I can tell that you got cut on your arm in the past. But unlike that, tachyons, you can observe what's going to happen to them. So you can put them. So you can put them through a magnetic field after you look at them, and you can know things about it when you're looking at it now. You can tell what's going to happen to them, but not what has happened to them. It's impossible to tell anything that has happened to them already from their properties. So it's
we're
like
kind of predicting the future.
Right.
Well, yeah, but only for the tachyon. It's only the tachyon's future, unfortunately.
Right. That's the main point of that.
So if you could have a tachyon camera, maybe you could take pictures of things that haven't happened yet. But I think that might take a while to build that one.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that, you can use it to get all the information from the future and invent everything else straight away.
Right. We should need to send a tachyon with some camera or something that he should get us a picture of the future or the past in which the period it is moving.
Exactly.
That can be quite fun.
Go on.
Oh, the only thing I had to say to that though is you're only seeing the future in which you hadn't seen the future. I know that's a contradictory statement, but you change what the future has changed because you look at it.
Can you say it all again? I didn't get it. It's just too complex for me.
So if you can use this to see the future, it's only the future in which you hadn't looked at it. So it might not come to pass.
Okay. That's a speculation of the tachyon.
So that if it obeys the laws of quantum mechanics as we think it does. So for example, if you use it to gain information, right? You might still be wrong. Because if you look up say who's going to win a football match, if you say you're not a moral person and you've got this technology, so you look at tomorrow's newspaper and see who won the big football game and bet all your money on the team that won. You've behaved differently. You've bet loads of money on them. So that could affect things. So then they might lose.
So you did something different in the past that might affect the future.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So the tachyon is not actually working for us. So first we have to place the bet and then send the tachyon. And not only that, everyone is also placing the bet, so that future might get changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
It can be changed in the last moment also. If you're sending the tachyon just right before 1 second, it can also change at that point also.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the future. So what you're seeing is the future.
Might not be in that sense. That can
you're
also
seeing, that you've seen it. The future could change it, because it's all to do with things like wave particle duality and things like that. Quantum physics looks different when people are observing it. There's a classic thing like the double slit experiment is a classic example.
Right, double slit experiment. Exactly. When you're observing it, it will show the behavior differently, and when you are not seeing it, it will show the behavior in a different way.
Exactly.
How
So
can the Neptune actually predict that actually there is an observer sitting in front of it and he can observe from where the particle is actually projected?
no, because if you can see it, then you're changing it.
Yes,
If it's
actually. Just by seeing,
like
just
there's
by seeing.
yeah, you can't like the double slit experiment. You can't like cheat it by like peeking out your eye or something like that. There's no
Right,
way of
right. If you are
Right.
tweaking, then also it will change its position. So
yeah.
I don't know how
So
smart
why
it
does
is.
that happen? What's the exact reason for it?
Oh, no one knows that.
No one knows
Because
that, actually.
because for a start we can't tell what it's doing when we're not looking at it.
Right, right, right.
Hmm.
And that
Um,
for such a small particle, we cannot predict
yeah,
it.
but tachyons are if anything smaller than electrons, so they should we're seeing that you see it changes it.
I think they are more interesting, the tachyons.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we know much less about them.
Right.
Yeah.
But as electrons have got the double slit experiment was one that I found very difficult to understand when I first saw it, because if you get, if anyone doesn't know, if you have two slits and you fire an electron beam kind of at them,
Hmm.
if you're looking at it, the electrons will go through one of the slits. But if you're
Right.
not looking at it, and then you have a pattern that collects how they come out at the end, when you're not looking at the slits,
Right.
they move as though they've gone through both slits at once.
Hmm.
So they genuinely behave differently when you're not looking at them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Right.
And that's an area of quantum physics that's very difficult to kind of grasp.
Right.
But that's where the whole one thing I mentioned earlier, the anthropic principle, is kind of based on this, like how the universe is what it is.
Right.
Hmm.
It's based on, because it needs an observer. That's the
Hmm.
idea behind the anthropic principle. The universe itself needs an observer. So the principles of the
Right.
universe fell to create observers, which is me and you, so that
Hmm.
life could exist.
Right.
Maybe, at least
You're
maybe.
observing. That's why it's acting in such a way, the universe. And if we
Yeah.
didn't observe it, it might be something different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Tenet?
No, I've not seen the movie Tenet. I've not
Okay,
been.
it actually talks about entropy in sense of time travel, so that's why I thought.
Ah, right, okay. No, but I know what entropy and time travel. I've not been out to a movie theater since the coronavirus stuff started. I haven't seen any new films, I don't think, since then.
Okay.
But what does it say about entropy and time travel?
Basically, I don't know why the entropy is used in sense of the time travel thing. That everything that should happen. Basically, the idea of movie is that you can change the future. That if you can change the past, it will create a different timeline. But the thing that is going to happen will always happen. So everything is conserved in some sense. So there is a loop there is a constant loop of things going on.
Yeah. So if time travel's possible, it kind of has to be a circle to it. Because maybe anyway. The main evidence for that is that the time keeps existing. We haven't run out of time yet, so that kind of implies that it's a closed loop. It doesn't seem to be. We don't seem to be bleeding time anywhere.
Right.
So either it's just straight line, so it's got nowhere to go, or if it's not just a straight line, then that does imply there's a kind of closeness to it. And maybe time if time's like say like a basketball or something, it's kind of that shape. You can have you can have the Big Bang at the top, and then it all goes out and goes round, and then comes back on itself,
Right.
and then goes round and round and round.
So time might be 3D.
Could be 3D, could be 2D, could be 5 or 6D.
Yes,
Right.
you cannot predict that actually.
That's I must admit where the maths gets above me for things like string theory. When you get into 40-dimensional,
High dimensions, right?
high dimensions, when there's 5 or 6 dimensions for time, I don't then understand what's going on a lot of the time. It gets very
It's actually very
complicated.
complex.
Yeah.
But there was a old mathematician who gave the idea of 4 dimension. I'm forgetting the name. His name starts with R, so I don't know the exact name, but he gave the idea of 4 dimension at that
4
time. I
dimensions.
think
I
his
don't
name
know.
was
Time being the 4th dimension is an old idea.
not actually time being 4 dimension, but his idea was that objects can be existing in 4 dimensions.
Oh yeah, there's yeah. So there's a bottle. I forgot what it's called as well. I've seen one.
Flatland.
No, Flatland is that's a book about being like two-dimensional to understand the fourth dimension.
Right.
But there was a but there's a bottle. I've seen one on like stage. Went to like this thing at school for people who like maths. And this guy claimed to have this bottle that's supposedly four-dimensional. And I didn't quite understand how it worked even when I saw it. But it's like, I don't know if anyone's watched Futurama, but they have it in it appears in that show as well. They have it as a joke. There's a beer bottle that looks just like it, and it's hard to explain, but it's like you could go around your hand and it's got a pipe that goes around it and through it.
It's in this shape.
Yeah,
Kind
it's
of
in a
an
very
eight.
yeah. It's got a kind of pipe that runs back through on itself.
Right.
And apparently that can't be mathematically mapped out in 3 dimensions. That bottle shape. You need like a 4th dimension, which is just like, so you have up, down, left, right, forwards, and backwards. But then you also have a 4th dimension, which is like outside of the bottle, just further away from its center, because you need that in order to facilitate its pipe. But I must say I didn't truly understand it. They look very weird, these bottles, when you pour them out. It doesn't pour in the way you'd expect it to. It doesn't. They're very counterintuitive devices. But I've seen one of these bottles, so they do exist. So maybe there is a 4th dimension in space.
There might be, but
they might.
We can't tell now.
Yeah, I mean that bottle. Maybe I just don't understand it. These bottles exist. They definitely do.
But these bottles can't exist in our 3D world because they're 4D. So that's just a model that's trying to replicate it.
No, they do exist. They definitely exist, and they cast.
No, they don't exist. I correct that. It's just an idea. It's just a figure that they made in 3D to explain that 4D concept. But that 4D thing can't exist in our 3D world.
Well, this item casts a 3-dimensional shadow. So when you cast a shadow, you lose
4D
a
object will have a 3D shadow.
Yeah, and these bottles that you put on stage cast a 3D shadow.
Okay.
When you shine light on them. So because you lose a dimension when you have a shadow, but this bottle, but this bottle's got a certain depth to its shadow where the pipe goes through it.
Okay.
So there is a 4th dimension of space. One would assume, but I must admit I'm not explaining it well because I didn't fully understand it. I was amazed by it when I saw it and didn't get it. And I don't claim I'm explaining it well now.
The concept of 4D itself is kind of mind-blowing that a 4D object will have a shadow that's 3D. And that shadow will also have a shadow, I guess. That's 3D.
Of a lower dimension.
The shadow has depth.
Okay.
But not for 3D, not for 3D object. It does not have depth.
3D objects don't. But if you can forward, but you lose a dimension. You lose a dimension when you cast a shadow.
Right.
So if you have like a truly 2-dimensional thing like a CD, if it truly had no depth to it, it would just be a line as a shadow. Although you can't really make a truly 2-dimensional object, it's always got some thickness. But if you could make one, it would have a 1-dimensional shadow. It would just be a line.
Right.
And these weird 4-dimensional bottles with the pipe through them, they do have a certain depth to their shadow. So there is a 4th dimension, but it's not. It doesn't apply to our lives in the normal circumstances. At least it doesn't seem to.
Right.
I see what you mean by it's mind-blowing, because it definitely doesn't feel like there's a 4th dimension.
Yeah.
Like, I can go forwards and backwards, and I can go left and right, and I can go up and down.
I can go inside out.
Yeah.
No, you don't know actually. How it basically turn out. Yes, for the 4th dimension.
Yeah. So, and they do say there's within like go back to string theory and like the whole universe. They do say that there isn't an out of the universe dimension. So, well, in a way that like there is an out, you can move out of your own body. if you keep going in a straight line far enough in one direction, you'd eventually loop back on yourself. You wouldn't hit an end
Right.
because the
It's
out of the
circular.
universe, the out of the universe dimension just doesn't exist. There is no outside the universe.
Okay. You will just constantly loop inside it.
Yeah.
You can't go out.
Yeah. You'd never hit an edge.
Right.
So universe
Ray,
is
do you have any
edgeless.
questions?
That is also one of the important questions. That universe has no end. Can you say that? Or according to it has
And
some
it's
end?
constantly expanding.
Since the Big Bang, it's only gotten bigger. That doesn't mean you'll keep doing it.
Oh
Okay.
yes. There is some energy that must be left over
Left,
that
right.
actually being dissipated in that sense.
Yeah. So
Because there is no actual creation of energy.
no, exactly. Yeah. So the universe is what it is. It's all its big, hot stuff, cold stuff, big stuff, flying around.
Right.
But entropy is always going up, which means that things are becoming more chaotic. They're basically boiling down, getting hotter. So as things, the universe could end realistically in one or two ways from a physics point of view. One is that it all just kind of falls apart. It's called the heat death, which is eventually, because entropy keeps going up, all you'll have is just chaos. You won't have any living beings or anything like that, or solid rock objects or anything, or any planets. It'll just be broken up bits of very hot stuff, and the universe will have a heat death. Or the other one is that as things start to fall apart, they'll fall together, and everything will fall in on it. The entire universe everything in it will clump together, and that's called the Big Crunch.
Right.
So it will collapse in itself.
Yes, into itself.
Okay.
And the driver behind how that would happen, if it's right, that theory, is that as things start to break apart, they'll fall into the black holes that exist. And then so eventually everything will fall into the black holes, which will pull each other together. And then you'll just have the universe will all just collapse in on itself as one supermassive black hole.
Right.
And if we basically move on to our next thing, that's quite very common question to ask with. So do you believe in aliens? Do they exist actually, or it's all the speculation or the theories that are being made that there must be some aliens or UFO sightings?
Because there have been many UFO sightings in recent times.
So yes, the Area 51 also.
Okay. So
Fermi paradox.
right, realistically, the Earth would be the only life-supporting planet in the entire universe across its entire eons that it's existed is very unlikely. However, I don't think that aliens abduct Americans and rectally probe them, and that the government's keeping it all under wraps.
Right.
That seems unlikely. And UFOs, an unidentified flying object, is what it says on the tin. It's unidentified. We don't know what it is. They could be, broken weather balloons. All kinds would look really weird. And all kinds of different explanations that are more likely than aliens are coming down into our atmosphere, flying around a little bit, and not really obviously doing anything else and flying away again.
Right.
But there have been many videos that the UFO is going in such a speed that a normal aircraft can't go, and it's also changing direction in a very quick way. It's going up, it's suddenly going down, suddenly going left and right.
Yeah, but exactly, without seeing that, you can't know exactly what it is. But it can be things like pockets of burning gas in the atmosphere and things like that seem more likely than
illusion. It can be illusion.
Yeah, it could be an issue with the camera. You're saying how you say it's going faster than an aircraft can go. How are you determining that? Unless you know how far away it is, and how big it is, you can't determine its speed from just a video.
Yes, it's relative. Actually, the speed is relative.
It could be much. If you know how big it is, you can tell how fast it's going. But you don't know how big it is, so it could be much smaller than you're saying and much closer to the camera, and as a result, not going that fast.
Right.
So that's how a lot of these videos are a thing. That like it could actually just be like a small like Chinese lantern, if you know what they are. They're like it could just be a small one of them out of focus a bit, flying reasonably close to the camera. But as to whether or not aliens exist, yes, probably somewhere. There's something in physics called the Drake equation, which is a quite complicated equation. It determines the likelihood of us contacting aliens. And one of the issues is the time constraint on it. So human beings have the ability to, assuming aliens communicate via radio or something we can do. We've only had the ability to do that for, say, 100, 200 years at most.
Right.
So they would have had to have sent a signal to be received at that time. If aliens are doing what we're doing, it's quite likely that they could have been sending signals to the dinosaurs, who wouldn't know,
Right.
and have gone extinct since.
Right.
Right.
I believe that dinosaurs are also listening to their signals.
Yeah. Because if that's when the signals arrived at Earth, then no one here would know, and we'd have no way of knowing.
Right.
And there's also, of course, a possibility because of the size of the universe, and it can't send information faster than the speed of light. If there could be a civilization very similar to ours, 100 million light years away.
Right.
But there'd be no way of us knowing for the next 100 million years.
Right, that can be possible.
Yeah, and that seems more likely to me than aliens are just popping into the Earth's atmosphere, zipping around a little bit, just out of focus on people's HD iPhone camera that they're carrying. They're still slightly out of focus, and then zipping off again, and not they'd either do something, they'd steal our resources or deliberately communicate. They'd do something that we would notice, something that couldn't easily be covered up. Why make all the effort to get here otherwise?
So according to you, these UFO sightings are fake, and UFO aliens might exist, but they are very far off. So even if we send a signal, it might not reach them.
Yes, no, we're not. I don't think humanity is communicating with aliens, and maybe these UFO signals they're not fake necessarily. They might not know what they are. I imagine a certain percentage of them are military tests, which is why the military the governments get very weird about them. So the ones where, for example, something really fast seems to fly, that could be a military testing a missile.
Kind of.
Yeah, or a plane or something, and that's why they won't tell anyone what it is. Because you get the people who believe in aliens and believe the government are covering up. Point two, there was a big thing flying through the sky. The government insisted it never happened. But I think it's more likely they're testing a plane or a missile, and that's why they insist it doesn't happen. It also explains why. Go on. Sorry.
No, please continue.
I was just going to say that also explains why these people are predominantly American. It does seem to be a predominantly American thing to insist you've seen a UFO.
Yes, actually, I don't know what's the reason for that.
Well, I think it's partly if it's military tests. The American military are very active, particularly in like their deserts and stuff.
Area 51.
Yeah. Well, Area 51. Area 51 exists, and it was a military test and is a military base of some kind.
Yes, exactly. It's a military base.
So I think that's all it is. That's why I think that's why it is predominantly Americans. Is that the American military do more weird stuff that people can't identify.
Right. That's unidentified.
Yeah.
Not the objects. And they're dragging aliens for no reason, just to basically cover up all the what do you call it, unidentifiable things.
Yeah, they're unidentified. They're not aliens.
Yes. And the third question to basically conclude this: do you believe in alien?
So what was the question? Do I believe in alien what? Sorry.
Alien abduction. Alien abductions. I was talking. The last question was
no.
The alien abduction. Do you actually believe in that?
No, I don't think aliens come down and abduct humans.
Okay, so these are all stories that were made up by people.
Yeah, so there's a combination of things. People drink too much. People take too many drugs.
They write on Reddit that they saw this and this.
And there's also a phenomenon for a lot of paranormal stuff like alien abductions, ghosts and stuff. A phenomenon called sleep paralysis.
Or
some people call it sleep demons, which is where people experience very intense, very real, very realistic hallucinations
Yeah,
whilst they're on the
I've
edge of.
experienced that.
Have you? Right, I never have. But some people like wake up and insist it's happened to them, which is why.
Mm.
So that could explain an alien abduction. Why people? Because these people seem to be alive. So presumably they're getting home after they get abducted.
Right. Actually,
Mm.
yeah. So it's
So
a
that
cover up for the sleep paralysis.
yeah, I think that's far more likely than aliens are just coming and just abducting some random people for a night
Mm.
and not doing anything else. Seems very unlikely.
Right.
Mm. Right.
That was all common in the alien version.